Hello, everyone. Thank you for being interested in this talk. This is Qunfang Wu from Syracuse University. I am presenting this work on behalf of my collaborators. As a content warning, this work contains racist quotes, which may be upsetting or harmful to some audience. This is the agenda of this talk. To provide some context, I would like to start with an example of a conversation about crime. This is a post from subreddit Baltimore. The background is a Black teenager, Donta Harris, was charged with felony murder, burglary, and auto theft for killing a white police officer when conducting burglary. Harris was waiting outside a home where the other three Black teenagers were conducting burglary. According to the evidence caught on camera, the police officer asked Harris to get out a stolen Jeep. Harris opened the door, hesitated, and then closed the door and drove over the police officer. When discussing this crime incident, one user kept using language animals to describe Harris and the other three teenagers. While Harris' race was not explicitly mentioned, the racialized language continued to link the teenagers and Black people with crime. Digital platforms such as Reddit afford users to be exposed or actively engage in conversations about crime, which contributes an increased awareness of crime. However, conversations about crime occurring on online spaces can be problematic. These conversations reinforce racialized narratives that marginalize the people of color and induce fear and further impact people's ability to engage in everyday routines. This signals a critical need to better understand how people frame their conversations about crime online. Our work drew on racial framing and collective narratives. Although racism refers to the racial operation devised by white people to subordinate people of color since the colonial era. However, in contemporary America, Jim Crow racism is no longer the primary racism. But Neil Silva defines new racism as the post-civil rights era set of arrangements, mechanisms, and practices responsible for the reproduction of white privilege at all levels. Neil Silva also articulated 4 central frames of new racism to illustrate how white people's narratives frames around colorblindness. Online communities can support the construction of racist spaces. This is best illustrated by platformed racism. The mechanisms how sociotechnical systems like Reddit enable the construction and propagation of racist ideologies. Online spaces can also support collective actions that pushes back against the platform racism. We focus on how collective develop counter-narratives to combat the dominant racist ideologies. We ask the research question, how are people engaging framing and combating racist ideologies in conversations about crime? We choose Reddit as this research site. Reddit allowed the users we call redditors to create sub-communities on various topics, among which crime is a popular topic. Moreover, Reddit is a unique platform to explore racial discourses, as it has a unique set of features that both shape and are shaped by user interactions, such as pseudonymity, the voting system, moderation, and more. We choose the subreddit Baltimore because the dominant narratives around Baltimore are unsafe and indeed synonymous with crime. We refer to FBS definitions of violent and property crime and generated a list of keywords to collect data about crime. We conducted both inductive analysis and deductive analysis on the collected conversations about crime. This is the summary of the findings. By engaging in these practices, redditors on the subreddit Baltimore were collectively mitigating people's fear of crime and destigmatizing Baltimore's image. However, on a deeper level, we found that many of these conversations were not actually related to developing an awareness of crime in a traditional sense. People were using old racial frames to perpetuate a racially coded language, rife with anti-Black stereotypes. They were also applied more covert new racial frames to cover their racism and discriminations against the Black people. Other Redditors fought against the platform racism by rehumanizing, drawing attention to systemic racism, and situating crime in root societal causes. While we see this will rise colorblind racial frames being perpetuated on Reddit, in the interest of time, I will explain minimization of racism as an example. Minimization of racism rationalized how discrimination is no longer a central factor impacting the life conditions of minorities. Through this argument, discussion of race in relation to crime could be considered in playing the race card. Redditors use the reverse racism to defend for themselves. Reverse racism or reverse discrimination is an inherently racist concept against affirmative action, which provides social and economic advantages to Black people. For example, in a post that the original poster recalled a mugging experience, the comment used the reverse racism. Why is it that Black people claim racism where there is none? It is so common. Victim complexes and so unattractive. I believe you are the snowflake. Crying racism where there clearly is none. I think you need a reboot. It is called reverse racism or discrimination. Another instance is that some Redditors denied the minority status of Black people. As this quote said, Black or African American people are the majority racial group, 62.8% of the population of Baltimore. To challenge this dominant ideology of this subreddit, one Redditor reminded people that racism is not directly associated with racial compensation. This particular individual drew upon the concept of institutional racism as defined on Wikipedia to describe how people's attitudes and beliefs were being shaped. In this work, we see people in digital spaces are weaponizing identities and engage in a kind of digital gentrification. We developed the two terms to explain ways where people can continue to perpetuate white hegemonic power structures in societies through online interactions. This work also discusses articulating rules and algorithmic detection to dismantle platform racism, especially colorblind racism. This work is a collaboration by Louisa Williams, Alan Simpson, Brian Simon, and me. It was supported by National Science Foundation and the Graduate School Fellowship at Syracuse University. Please contact me if you are interested in this work or have any questions. Thank you for listening.